how did you first meet Elon Musk, and what were the early days of SpaceX really like for you?
Yeah. Elon called me out of the blue in 2001. It was July on a Friday afternoon, and I was driving home from work, getting ready for a nice long weekend in northern Utah where the summers are really nice. And at the top down on the car, and the phone rings, and it was a Palo Alto area code, and I'd lived there, so I thought maybe it was somebody I knew. So I opened the phone. It was a old Motorola StarTAC, and answered it. And this strange accent. It was not UK. It was somewhere in the colonies. I wasn't really sure. And he started talking about how he wanted to make humanity a multiplanetary species. Hello, my name is Ian Musk. I thought he said. He just went on this long discussion about how he wants to make humanity multiplanetary, how he wants to get it off its addiction to fossil fuels and stop tyrants from controlling free speech, all in like two sentences. And I said, I said, well, why are you calling me? And he says, well, I need to buy Russian rockets to do this Mars mission, and I'm told you're the guy that can help me. And oddly enough, that was true. So I said, look, listen, I'm on my way home. I got the top down on the car. I'll call you when I get home. He said, fine. So I got home. I called the number back, and it was a fax machine. So in today's world, you don't hear faxes too much, but it's this high pitched squealing sound. And I got that when I called back. So I thought, an internet entrepreneur that uses a fax machine as a phone, a little eccentric. So he called me back about 20 minutes later from a different number, which was his mobile phone. And he was very upset. And they said, he didn't call me back. And I explained, about the fax machine. And he said, well, yeah, I don't want people necessarily know my number. This is my mobile. And he said, where are you? And I said, Logan, Utah. He said, do you have an airport? And I said, yeah, I can see it from my front porch. And he said, well, I'll be there tomorrow. I've got a private plane. I'll come to your house. And I'm thinking, no, you're not coming to my house. I didn't know who he was, right? And in the 20 minutes between when he called and the first time and when he called back the second time, I got on the internet and started searching the name Ian Musk. I couldn't find anything. So I didn't know who this guy was. So I lied and I said, listen, I'll meet you in the airport of Salt Lake City. And this was before 9/11, and you could actually just walk behind the security. And I knew he couldn't pack a weapon, and there'd be police nearby. So that was why I chose that. And so we met in a Delta Airlines conference room. So that was my first meeting with Elon.
And then what happened after that when you went to Russia? What was your experience like with Elon Musk in the with the Russians?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd spent something like 6 years off and on in Russia prior to this. One of my first jobs was in Toulouse, France, with the French Space Agency, and it was a mission to Mars, a French-Soviet mission to Mars. So been through the Soviet Union. In fact, I was there during the putsch in 1991. And afterwards, when I came back to the U.S., had spent a lot of time on behalf of the U.S. government and Soviet Russia. So, the Russians are the Russians, and you still see it today, right? They, I'll just say they're not as evil as everybody seems to think, but, they definitely look out after their own interests. So, back then it was no different. And so we did several trips over there, three, as I recall. And, first one was just sort of reconnaissance, if you will. And Adele Ressi went with us, which was his college friend. And Adele was involved in this early idea of sending mice to Mars. That evolved actually into sending a plant to land on Mars. And that's what we were discussing with the Russians then. And so the early idea was to have this group called Lavochkin build it and fly it. And that was kind of one way to do it. We just provide money and management. And that was a model that we proved out at the Planetary Society with something called Cosmos One. And the second The second idea was to build the lander ourselves. But, Lavochkin had done the Venus mission that just re-entered. They built that years ago. So they'd done most of the Soviets' interplanetary missions. So that one was a good trip, and that's the famous image of the three of us in the Lavochkin dining room that's in Isaacson's book. And then we did two more later. The last one being to actually buy the launch vehicles. We'd settled on a mission plan. We'd build it in the U.S. We'd launch it out of Russia, and it would go on a converted ICBM. So we ended up talking to two different design bureaus, as they called them, not companies. And one had built these ICBMs for the Cold War, and that's where we got spit on by the chief designer and basically ushered out. It was a very Soviet-esque, even 10 years after the Soviet Union. It was very Soviet style management and so on. And then the second one we went and saw the next day was Cosmotras, and they were a little more westernized. They'd been schooled by the Thiokol people, who are now, I guess, Northrop Grumman, that built the shuttle boosters. They had a business deal with them, so they were a bit schooled in the Western way. They were a little smoother, but still, like, they didn't know I spoke Russian, and they referred to Elon as Malchik, which is child, little boy, in Russian.